It was Valentine's Day night in the Artane neighborhood of Dublin, Ireland, at the Stardust Nightclub, where hundreds of young people had gathered together, the majority of them couples, to celebrate Valentine's Day and have a good night of partying in 1981. It had been a happy and joyful evening with a disco dancing contest that had just ended between 1:30 and 1:40 a.m. As the winners were giving a demonstration on stage, someone noticed a small fire in a west alcove seating area that began to spread rapidly. By 1:44 a.m., the fire had begun to spread across polyurethane foam seats that were in the area of the west alcove, as well as plywood tables, and up into the ceiling, which was also covered with polyurethane foam and carpet tiles that were not fire-rated. By 1:45 a.m., the fire had spread across much of the ceiling, and the lights in the building went out and fell to the ground, with chunks of the ceiling burning, falling down on top of people panicking below. Now, there were 6 total exits from the Stardust Nightclub. There was the main entry and exit point that everyone knew about, which quickly became a crowd crush as everyone tried to escape the encroaching flames from that direction. There was an emergency exit that not many people knew about, but several people did manage to escape successfully. There was another door that was locked for an emergency exit that they managed to kick the door open, but unfortunately the DJ had parked his van in the way and no one could squeeze past it. Then there were 2 other emergency exit doors that were behind some chairs and a place to put old bottles. Both of those had chains and padlocks on them and were likely locked at the time of the fire because no one was able to get the door open. And then there was a 6th emergency exit that was down a flight of stairs that no one knew about and no one actually escaped from. Now, in addition to that, many people went into the bathrooms to try to escape out the windows there. But unfortunately, the owners of the Stardust Nightclub had put bars on the windows. So people on the outside of the building could see people in the bathroom banging on the windows trying to escape. They got sledgehammers and swung at the bars. They wouldn't come off. They got a chain and tied it to cars to pull them off. They wouldn't come off. So they became trapped and died in the bathroom. Now, in total, 48 individuals would be killed in this fire, ranging in ages of 16 to 26, with 24 of those being under the age of 18. Now, in the aftermath of the fire, an inquiry determined that the fire was likely arson, which legally exonerated the owners of the building from any responsibility for the fire whatsoever, and they were unable to be successfully sued by any of the victims, despite their egregious oversight of any fire safety practices whatsoever. They also had literally no evidence to prove that it was actually an arson. They basically said, we don't have anything else, so it was probably arson. It would take until 2023 for the families of the victims to get a new inquiry into the fire, which determined the fire was caused by an electrical fault and allowed a settlement with the families for 24 million euros. So let's talk about what happened with the Stardust Nightclub fire on February 14th, 1981 that ended up killing 48 people in the Artane neighborhood of Dublin, Ireland. Yep, it's a whiteboard video. So the main issue we're going to talk about with the Stardust Nightclub fire was the exits, because it's hard to talk about things that didn't exist. There were no sprinkler systems. There essentially were no fire extinguishers. There was a general fire alarm system, but it did not alarm in the actual nightclub itself. If the fire alarm system went off, it alerted management, who would then make a decision based on that because they didn't want panic if the fire alarm went off. So when the actual fire started, nobody knew until the fire spread, until it was too late to do much of anything. Now, on the night of the fire started in this west alcove right here in the back corner near the bar. Now, this west alcove was full of chairs that were made out of polyurethane foam. There were flammable carpet tiles that went up to the ceiling, and then polyurethane foam on the ceiling as well. So this fire, as it got going, really quickly spread this direction, and down this direction, which caused significant issues. As it went out into the main dance floor, as the smoke and all that built up, people would have an option of 6 different exits. There's one right here, there's one over here, there's one here, one here, one here, and one right here. Now, unfortunately, for the vast majority of people, when they are in an emergency, they tend to go to the place that they know best. Usually, that is where they enter from. So everyone entered through this doorway right here. So the vast majority of people are going to try and exit out that same doorway. They're going to go this direction and then try and go out this direction. Unfortunately, there were 2 doors to get to the outside out this main exit. There was a set of doors here and then a set of doors here. What happens when you have two sets of doors is you have two potential locations for people to get stuck, especially in emergency as they're trying to rush out the exit. Multiple people trying to go out this door causes a crush back here. People get through here, they try and go out this door together, it causes a crush right in this area. So a lot of the 800 people inside went down through this direction, and it caused a mass crush at this entrance here. Now, this exit here was fine. There wasn't really anything wrong with it. It wasn't locked, none of that. The only issue was not many people knew it actually existed, because you had to go down here and then down this hallway. Now, if you're familiar with Stardust Nightclub, you'll know that there were a couple of the rooms over here, but they don't really have anything to do with the fire other than the exit was over here, so I didn't draw them to make this bigger to be easier to explain. Anyway, so some people did make it out this direction, but only the people that generally knew that there was actually an exit over here. Now we go to exit number 3. This door also unlocked. Great. However, also, not many people knew this was here, because you had to go here, down here, and then you had to go downstairs out this door. And because there was a closet right here with walls, this door itself and the stairwell right here were blocked from vision. So once the fire exited out of the west alcove into the dance floor area, the power went out in the actual building itself. The lights dropped down. So the only way you could see was the glow of the fire as it spread. And as the fire spreads, it produces more smoke, which makes that glow even less useful. So not many people actually made it over here and out this door. Now, we move to our next exit, which is this door number here and this door here, these two together. The owner of the Stardust Nightclub fire was tired of people sneaking into his nightclub, so he instructed his employees to put a chain with a padlock over both of the panic hardwares for this door. Now, there is debate as to whether or not they actually locked the panic hardware for this door. There was definitely a chain with a padlock hanging over both of the doors, but there's debate on whether or not it was actually locked. Many of the survivors say, yeah, it was locked. We had to break it open, but it was never conclusively proven. But in addition to having that chain draped over the panic bars or actually locked, there was a bunch of stuff that had been piled up in front of the doors. Here, there was a bottle skip, which is basically where they'll put old bottles, as well as a couple chairs in this area, which you had to move out of the way first to be able to get to the door. And then over here, there were a bunch of chairs in front of the door that they had to either move or climb over to actually get to the exit. That increases your escape time, which increases your potential for injury and death. Now, we move to our last exit. Now, our last exit here is also an emergency exit, but this exit was locked. Fantastic. We love locked emergency exits. No, we don't. So people came down here, found this door was locked. Eventually, they did manage to kick this door open. The problem was the DJ parked his van right there. And when they kicked this door open, the doorway was blocked because of the van parked on the outside. And so no one could actually squeeze through that exit. Probably parked his van there because this is the stage right here. So he wanted to move his equipment easily and then never moved it and blocked the door. So that was another issue. Now, we have effectively, this door is jammed with people. This door no one knows exists. This door no one also knows exists. This door is either locked, but is also blocked by a bunch of stuff. This door is also locked, but also blocked by a bunch of stuff. This door is locked and also blocked. So our only real option here, if you are still out in this area and you see people struggling at this door, see people struggling at this door, see people struggling at this door, and see people struggling at this door, and don't know these two exits exist at all, is to try and get out a window. Now, there were two windows in this particular establishment. Both of them were in the bathrooms, right here. The problem was, the owner of the Stardust Nightclub decided just a couple days before the fire, up to a couple weeks before the fire, that he was going to install bars on these windows, steel bars and steel plates. So when people went into the restrooms to try and break through the windows to get out, they were met by steel plates and steel bars. So people on the exterior of the building realized there's a fire going on, people are trapped, what are we going to do? They went to these bathroom windows and attempted to pull the bars off. Couldn't do it. They got sledgehammers swung at them. Couldn't do it. They got chains, tied them to the bars on the windows, tied them to the backs of cars, and attempted to pull them off. Couldn't do it. So some people died trapped in the bathrooms trying to get out this window here. Many people died in this crowd crush here trying to get out. Some people died on the dance floor holding hands together, attempting to find an exit. Now, one of the things with the Stardust Nightclub that often happens with nightclubs is it was a relatively short ceiling. Now, with a relatively short ceiling, you have some good things for a nightclub. It makes it feel more personal. It makes it feel more dark. It makes it feel more intimate. The problem with a low ceiling is that when you have a fire, it causes things to become worse, conditions inside the actual nightclub itself to become worse quicker. What I mean by that, so is if you have your fire start here, right? If you have a tall ceiling, your smoke has a long way to go to actually begin to fill up that area, because your smoke layer, when you have a fire, your smoke layer goes up and it starts to fill this section up here, right? And then as that fire burns, your smoke layer will descend downward. Now, if you have a high ceiling, you have a long time until that smoke layer gets all the way down low enough to actually cause problems on floor level. But because the Stardust Nightclub had a relatively short ceiling, this smoke layer can descend down much faster, get past this drop down right here that prevented it initially from coming out, and get out in this area faster. Now, because it was a wide area, it's going to take a long time for it to fill, but not as long as it would if it were a taller ceiling. And because this burns so quickly, and because polyurethane creates so much smoke, this area and this smoke layer is going to end up filling significantly faster than it would if it were a taller ceiling. In addition, as this smoke layer drops, this smoke layer is going to be upwards of 1100 degrees Celsius, which is about 2000 Fahrenheit. The longer you can keep that level up higher, the better chance you have of more people escaping, because as soon as that gets to you, you're done. You're dead. That's the end of it.